Okay, so I promised you guys I would do this video. We're going to play Todd Nepola's 10-minute rant where he threatens to sue Bravo. And I'm going to take you through what he claims. And we're going to talk about truth. And we're going to talk about perception and what's real and what isn't based on my knowledge of the contracts, the new ones, the old ones. And also, I'm going to try to have you see what was said in the media. I want you guys to really get into this with me. And by the end, you're going to learn why Todd can't do what he's saying. But maybe you should refer him to this video because he might learn something in the process. And yes, I do drag Todd a little bit, but only based on what Alexia has said was the truth, not based on anything like, directly to him, because I want to be fair. And so I'm going to show you everything and you can see how you feel about it at the end.
The biggest mistake I've made in my adult life was agreeing to participate in the Real Housewives of Miami. Now, I was not one who really wanted to give up my privacy and become a reality star. That was never for me. And I certainly never enjoyed filming, and I'm sure that's obvious to anyone who ever watched the show. But the final straw, the breaking point, came when lies started being told and Adriana went on TV and started making claims that I was struggling and couldn't pay my rent and I was having financial problems.
So then we jump to this season of the show and Adriana de Moura is hosting the baby shower for Julia. And this is said. Also, at the baby shower, Alexia added, "I'm very stressed out. I have a lot of anxiety, just like about everything," before accusing party host Adriana de Moura of adding a lot of stress to her situation too. Another flashback to Real Housewives of Miami season 6 reminded viewers that Adriana had alleged that the couple was having financial issues at the time. "I'm not blaming Adriana for Todd leaving, but nobody likes lies and rumors about their marriage or your relationship," she explained. But I suppose based on Todd's video, maybe she should blame Adriana for her breakup with Todd. So let's discuss this. First and foremost, at Miami Fan Fest this last year, Adriana said this about her falling out with Alexia and Marysol over her comment that Todd had financial issues. She said, "Hey, Alexia, Marysol, and I are back on the good wagon," de Moura 58 exclaimed on the red carpet in a joint chat with BFF Julia Lemigova, further joking that the reconciliation was an act of God. Now, she also says that the main person who brought Alexia, Marysol, and Adriana together again was Julia Lemigova. Now, if you consider what's happening in the current season of Real Housewives of Miami, that's going to be very interesting to you. So it's pretty clear that Todd believes that the producers put Adriana up to what she said about Todd's finances in her confessional video.
And it was a real blow to me, and I couldn't believe people would make these kind of lies up. And I was very mad at her for lying on TV, and she knew it was a lie. And I was mad at Alexia for getting me involved in this mess. But I was the most mad at the producers who knew the story wasn't true. And they didn't just run it, they ran it and reran it and reran it with no regard for me or my feelings or the truth. And in fact, I was the one telling them after the story came out, and I knew that they filmed it, that I had just bought a $24 million shopping center. What was my financial problem?
And indeed, Todd did buy a shopping center, 2 adjacent ones actually, in Lauderdale Lakes in December of 2022. And I'm sure he was really proud of this purchase. And I'm sure he wanted to share that with the producers to show that he's got dough.
But they really didn't care. The show must go on. And they did. The show did go on. And it got to a breaking point where I couldn't take it anymore. And I had to make a very hard decision. I realized I couldn't live in this world anymore. And the woman I loved couldn't live without it. So I had to make a decision to leave. And it was a very tough decision, but it had to be made.
And indeed, Alexia went on a press tour during the Bravo Fan Festival in Miami to basically say that she was willing or considering giving up the show if Todd asked her to, if it would save her marriage. But it sounds to me from the video that Todd's dropping that he did ask her to quit the show and she still stayed on the show. But at least in the press, this is what she said, which is why Kim D thought it couldn't possibly be the show that broke them up, although I differed in that opinion only because I know what the show does to men. At the Bravo Fan Fest event in Miami, Alexia said that many of their relationship troubles stemmed from her involvement with the show. Quote, "I love Todd," Alexia said. "I've always said that we love each other. It was just that we have had a lot of issues because of the show." Now, if you remember during that season, Todd kind of abruptly leaves an event. He doesn't seem happy to be around the cameras. And then also he's sort of hiding out and everybody is there and he's like waiting for the shoot to be over. And we kind of get a sense of that on the show. And the women are sort of like, uh-oh. And he also sounds like he wants to break up with Alexia on camera in that season over the show on camera, right? In the way he's behaving, which is not coming from, the drama from the show. It's just them shooting the show. So if you guys remember, Anthony Lopez and Todd Nepola got into it in the early season too, because Todd gets pissed that Nicole Martin, I guess, disrespected a lawyer friend of his that he brought into the show on camera. And then he brings this up to Anthony Lopez, and Anthony Lopez kind of whacks Todd at the table a little verbally. And then Todd says, like, you have like a small crappy company or something to Anthony Lopez. And then he does like a huge public apology about this later. Like, I don't know, I'm sure you don't have a small law firm. By the way, Anthony Lopez is moving off hurricanes now and moving into immigration. I told you that with the new law changes with lawyers on hurricanes that the squeeze would be on. Alexia went on saying that the show placed, quote, "a lot of pressure on their relationship. It's hard to do these shows on your own if your husband doesn't support it," she shared.
I was well aware of the storyline they were creating for Series 7 about the reconciliation, and I agreed that I would go along with that. In return, I was under the impression I was getting some apologies from Adriana, and I was going to be let off the hook, so to speak, and not dragged like past husbands of these kinds of TV shows. So it seemed like a pretty fair deal to me, so I stayed quiet and let it air out. Now, not surprised at all that it didn't play out as I had expected.
And indeed, Adriana de Moura apologizes to Alexia and Marysol about her comments of comparing her foot injury to what happened to Frankie in his car accident, which was absurd. That was so disturbing. Anyway, but Adriana does not mention anything about Todd in that apology, which means either the producers asked her or egged her on in that direction and she wouldn't go for it because they can't make you say it, or the producers didn't bother because they didn't really care till now.
I see no apologies coming my way. Nobody acknowledging the slander and defamation of character they did to me. I see actually the story getting worse and they're making up stories about how I moved out of the house and left Frankie alone, which none of this is true. It's just for the storyline. And I've stayed quiet. For 18 months, I sat back and stayed quiet out of respect and love to Alexia.
Now, here's where we go off the reservation because, frankly, the producers didn't say what he's saying, nor did Bravo, but actually his ex-wife Alexia said it on TV, and she wasn't made to say this. We're not made to say anything. She said this on her very own, and I think it was real. So I'm going to play it for you now.
06. I got home. Everything was missing. He had moved him and his daughter out. The month before, he apparently had gotten keys to an apartment and they were taking things. And I had no idea. Toiletries, everything. He even took the shampoo I was telling Marysol from the bathtub.
Wow,
so I'm like freaking out. Everything's gone. And Frankie's like, "Mom, Todd's gone. He's gone." He did this in front of my son, Julia. He left him there in front, moving the things with the suitcases, the whole thing, and gave a about Frankie. In the morning, he was planning all this to get me out of the house. He kept on telling me, "Why don't you leave already?" Because I was going to do something with Peter. "Why don't you leave already?" And I was like, "No, because Peter's not ready." Well, it doesn't matter. He had it all planned. He moved out of our house, with Frankie there.
I mean, a lot of detail for a lie, right?
But at some point, you're pushing too far. And this is the point. Now, I could understand Alexia bashing me. And I could understand her coworkers doing the same. Even the one I've never met once in my life who seems to be obsessed with me. That's all fine. And I'm not surprised one bit that the producers are running this because they need a storyline to sell you guys a show. But what did surprise me is that they used Peter to come at me and bash me and say that I don't give a shit about Frankie.
Now, Todd and Peter have never gotten along. I don't care what he says in this video. They've always been hostile to each other. And this is what he says on the show. It's in the mid-season trailer. If she decides to get back with Todd, that's not fair for Frankie. And he's obviously talking about Frankie Rosello. And they mention in this article, which of course is on Bravo's website, that he was present for Todd's covert move-out operation. Okay, so this is Bravo PR writing this with their press people. I don't want Frankie living with someone that doesn't really give a shit. Oh, I mean, is that unfair to say? Did Todd give a shit? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, now you hit a nerve and now you have my attention and you're going to start getting some responses. That's where you went too far. Now, there is no doubt Alexia is an amazing mother and does everything for Frankie she can. And so does his father, by the way, who never seems to get any credit. This guy works 5 days a week to support himself and spends almost every weekend out with Frankie, taking him out and taking care of him, being a great dad. And he deserves recognition. However, beyond those two people, there's nobody on planet Earth that's done 1,000th of what I've done for Frankie in the last 7 years.
I would be saying the nicest things about Frankie and Peter's dad, too, because he's a Rosello. All right. You guys know that there was a big cocaine cowboy movie done about the Rosellos and the cartel, the Falson Magluta cartel, and the cocaine network in Miami. And oh my God, Alexia, when she was young, was all sucked into that because of course, her husband, who's Peter and Frankie's dad. Now he's since been, of course, rehabilitated, and I'm sure he's a great dad, but I would definitely be saying the most nicest things about him in this video too, if it was me.
In 7 years' time of living with Frankie, just about every morning we'd wake up together before everybody else and have a coffee and talk. Every afternoon I come home from work and I spend time with Frankie. I didn't just provide for Frankie financially by putting a roof over his head and putting food on his table and designer clothes on his back. I did do that, but I also did a lot more. And to say I didn't give a shit is ridiculous. Let's talk about it. Took him to the movies, took him to the beach, took him to the jacuzzi, took him to the pool, took him on cruises, took him on vacation for weekend getaways. 2, 3, 4 nights a week, Alexia and I would take him to dinner. We would go out on the weekends and we'd take him with us. I would spend so much time with Frankie. I was very involved with getting Frankie trainers for his health. I was very involved with getting Frankie into the Des Moines Foundation. I was involved in getting him all sorts of speech therapists and anything I could do to make this guy's life better. I was all for it. And that's why it really hurts that someone's going to come at me and say that I didn't give a shit about him, because I'm going to tell you, there's not a person on planet Earth who's done as much for him other than his parents as me. And that's how I love Frankie. And you know what? Because I love Frankie, I'm going to speak up, because Frankie would want me to, because he knows this isn't true.
So on this one, I'm torn. Alexia started this. She's obviously the reason that Peter has this impression. We can tell from what she said to the women on the show. So I don't really blame Peter for saying what he said, because he's going to duplicate what his mom said. And obviously didn't like him anyway. But the thing is that if Todd did all these things, it's very impressive. And it says a lot about his character that, you know, he stepped up for Frankie in those ways and was that supportive, because it's very challenging to take on someone who has a disability when it's not your child. So for this, I applaud Todd, if it's true.
No, I really have no problem with Peter. In fact, after Alexia and I split up, I reached out to Peter and I told him how bad I felt, how things went between us and the pressures that he and I had to deal with. And I told him how bad I felt that I was never able to help him launch a career and get started with a job and get his life on track. And I felt bad for all the pressure the guy had. And I made it very clear, that's my failure more than his. And I told him I would always be there for him, regardless of whether he wanted my help and regardless of my position with his mom. And I always stand by that, and I will always stand by that.
And actually, Peter should really take Todd up on that offer, like now.
Today, I feel bad for Peter because the producers used him again. You see, they convinced him to go and tell the story for their ratings, and he knows better than anyone when they got something on you, they put it up against you. Except what Peter probably doesn't know, and why he probably had to do this, is because thanks to me, I'm the one who convinced Alexia to negotiate a deal for Peter and Frankie to get paid. That's why they get paid. And that's why I probably believe Peter had to do it, for the paycheck. So I kind of understand that. I'm not mad at him all.
So I've done quite a lot of reality TV in my time, and I was, on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills in season 2, and I made appearances in season 1 and 3, and I've seen a lot of the contracts, even my friends' contracts that were on the show, different capacities, guest stars. I saw my ex's contract. They were trying to get him to sign the release. I've seen old contracts and new ones, and they don't pay kids. So this is, I don't know what she told him. If she said that to him, she lied or he made it up. And he thinks that she accomplished this goal after he gave her advice, but he didn't. The kids aren't paid on the show. And especially ones that aren't integral into the plot. Okay. So, and what do I mean by that? Like, absolutely, I've heard of no kid being paid. And if you remember, Gia was like almost acting like a friend for Teresa Giudice on New Jersey. I heard she wasn't even being paid. So this then definitely not paying Peter. Okay, so this whole thing is not real. I don't know where he got it.
And my offer to always be there for him will always stand. Peter shouldn't be calling me out on TV. Peter should be thanking those that are helping take care of Frankie, like me. That's the truth. Even after the divorce, I continued to support Alexia and Frankie, paid the rent. She used my Amex to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars a month.
Now, this is kind of shocking for a few reasons. Number one, Alexia doesn't show that he's given any financial support to her. In fact, she makes it sound like she got evicted. In addition to that, she's sleeping with Todd on and off at this time. Is that why she stayed with this guy? Was it because she was like, shit, I got to get some money in because my paycheck on the show wasn't enough for the overhead with the 2 kids and everything else I got to deal with. So now that was wild. So that made me look at something. Remember this? In an episode interview, Alexia explained why she was saying goodbye to the gorgeous apartment that we see on the show with Todd. We've been renting for the last 6 years, and unfortunately the owner decided to sell his apartment, and he sold it really quick because I made it so beautiful, she said, and now I need to move out. In fact, they have to move out in 15 days. As Alexia talked to Peter and her younger son, Frankie, about rental apartments, she explained that's why we have to move out, because we rent. We didn't buy the unit, she added. Todd doesn't think it's a good financial decision to buy an apartment. He likes to buy commercial property. But then, boom, after this, they break up and he buys a house for $4 million as soon as the divorce is finalized.
That's what I did. And in fact, the house they live in, where you live as well, Peter, I pay the rent on that house. Even after the show came out and I was so hurt and I couldn't believe this was going to happen to me again, and I saw the first episode, I still continued to pay these bills. That's who I am and that's what I did. And it doesn't seem fair that you're going to come for me now. You should be thanking me instead. With all that said, I still feel bad for him because the producers got the best of him and he knows it and I know it and there's no hard feelings there. But you did change the storyline for me. Now I have to speak up.
Todd Nepola recently in one of his videos or interviews or something said that he thought maybe Alexia Nepola was with him for his money. So it doesn't sound like to me like he thinks that highly of her. Just from that statement. I tried to find it, but I can't remember where, and I'm too tired to keep looking. Now, it does exist, though. You guys could probably find it. It's probably on one of my shows where I played Todd. But, I mean, again, this is a fantasy. The producers didn't put Peter up to it. Like, you know, they just said to him, tell the story of how you feel. They don't do that. They don't say this. You know, they might give you a hint of what they want you to talk about, and then you kind of get a feeling like you better say something. But they don't, like, force it down your throat. You know, and you can refuse to say something and they're not going to fire Peter over it or Alexia. So I think Todd's kind of like in fantasy land here.
You see, there's been hundreds of podcasters and news media articles that wanted to write stories and they wanted my side of the story and I stayed quiet. But I can't sit back and let you create this narrative that I just didn't give a shit about Frankie. Not only do I love Frankie, I love myself too, and I'm not going to let you and the producers do this to me. So no hard feelings, but I'm going to have to start talking as well.
As he should. As he should.
Even as I sit here today, I'm still heartbroken about the fact that Alexia never told me this was going to happen to me and that she allowed this to happen. And worse yet, she and I actually did reconcile in January of this year after the show filmed, and we were together and doing great for months. And she never said a word about anything coming my way. And since then, I've never heard an I'm sorry, never got a text, nothing. It's just too bad, so sad.
Payback's a bitch, Todd.
And while I'm never going to try and win over any viewers because I truthfully don't care about that, I do want to tell my side of the story, and I am going to go out there and do it so the viewers know I didn't leave Frankie home alone, and it wasn't this crazy situation where he was so distraught on the couch, and I'm not this horrible person they make me out to be. But at the end of the day, I have to stand up for myself. And what we'll do is I'll tell my side of the story, and Bravo can tell their side of the story, and you, the viewers, will get to judge what you believe and what you don't believe. Like I said, I'm not trying to win anybody over, but I am trying to tell a side of the story. You'll get to be the judge and jury. Now, for the producers, there's a totally different story I have for you guys. These producers, they like to sit in their editing rooms and production rooms and hide behind the cameras, and they'll drag anybody. And all you got to do is look at the past husbands and boyfriends of this show. They have no regard for anyone, as if we don't have families, friends, lives, careers. It just doesn't matter as long as they're making a show. And they hide in private, and they could care less about the truth. They just want to make a show. And if you confront them, they say, you got a bad edit, I'm sorry. Well, that's not going to cut it anymore, because these producers know the secrets are coming out, that you have people on these shows hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on other castmates to ruin them. They're hiring PR companies and social media bot accounts to hurt people with no regard for them whatsoever. These people have script writers to give them, witty one-liners so they seem so good and they could turn the direction of themselves and make themselves look fantastic.
Payback's a bitch, Bravo. Oh, and that was a shade towards Marysol. There's been a few dragathons in here to Marysol from Todd.
And you know about this, and you guys hide in the private room and you don't get exposed. Well, that's going to change, because all these things you've been doing to the cast, how are you going to like it if I expose you? How are you going to like it if these things are done to you and I draw you out into the public? How is it going to feel when you're getting questioned by the public on the way you behave? Let's see.
Get in line, Todd. Get in line.
But the difference is for you guys, and the difference is for people like Adriana, who slandered my name and who made up all these lies and thought it was fun and clever, and the producers who thought they could edit it and rerun it and rerun it and rerun it and keep showing it and keep talking about it and there'd be no consequences. And for the producers who really didn't even have a right to have me on TV for season 6, you're going to have a different crowd that I want to perform for, so to speak. You're going to have a courtroom to perform in, and you're not going to have to convince the public. You're going to have to convince a real judge and a real jury if you had the right to use me on TV and lie about me on TV when you knew it was a lie. Let's see where we go with this.
So sadly for Todd, this is not going to go anywhere. He's about to get a really horrific wake-up call when he hands in the contract that he signed just to be like a bit character on the side, because they pretty much have you sign a clearance form which says they can use your image, voice, everything for perpetuity, and there's nothing you can do about it, and they can depict you in any way they see fit, false light, negative, everything, which is why I won't sign their agreements anymore on my content, because thank God my contract has long expired, except for the stuff that, I did in the early seasons. That'll never end. Yeah, no, I think they used my face to promote Jurassic Park, the new Jurassic Park, and I got nothing, not even a movie ticket.
Because for all the people you've dragged with no regard for them whatsoever, past and present people on the show, I'm the guy with the reputation. I'm the guy with the resume in life. And I know you've been digging up as much dirt as you can. Doesn't seem like you found so much, but I'm also the guy with the resources to take you guys down. So you found this game very clever. You wanted to get the rating launched, so good for you, you did. Except now I'm going to speak up and I'm going to take your asses to court, and we'll find out if you had a legal right to do it. And you know what? You said it. You replayed it. Now you better prove it.
Sadly, defamation and slander doesn't work in reality TV because there's no union and the contracts are like level, almost criminal level. But you sign them and they can enforce them. And that's why the Reality Reckoning never got any traction. And if you go in the Patreon, you can learn a lot more about the legal components of it. Maybe Todd should do that so he could figure out maybe a way to find a clause that would make the contracts illegal. That would work. And if you could make that retroactive, then all the reality stars could sue NBC and then it might work. And then Bravo would have to start paying proper compensation, as they should.
And if you can't prove it, you're going to pay me. And I think I'm going to take all that money I'm going to win, and I'm going to win a lot of money. And when I do, I'm going to give it to groups that work with people that are bullied, cyberbullied, bullied in person, attacked online, by people like you who hide in these rooms and destroy lives, destroy families. You're not good people. And just face it, I sit here and say that. For the viewers, you could question me, but over the 15 years of the show, you call it a guilty pleasure to watch it. But would you ever participate in it? Would a sane person ever expose their lives? For what? To go to BravoCon and have people tell you they love you? Bullshit. You wouldn't do it either. And the past performance of this show, look at where these families have wound up in. Tons of divorces, people in jail, miserable lives. I mean, it's just created no happiness and no joy for Earth other than a guilty pleasure. So you could enjoy watching it, but for the participants, I think you got to get your heads checked. And for the producers who produce it and hide in the rooms, I'm coming for you.
I do like Todd's gumption. I don't like what Alexia said he did. If it turns out that Alexia lied about all this, because she's really where this started, and she made this up in some way, then wow, I hope Todd comes on my show and clears his name. That's all I'm going to say. All right, you guys, like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. Thanks for listening the full 25 minutes. You're a champ. And I'll read your comments especially.